Hello everybody, my name is Craig Bennett and I'm the founder and owner of TechViews and Up, and today I'm going to show you about Tundra Orbits. Now, as far as things goes, the video that you're watching in the background is just a little clip of me making a Tundra Orbit in Kerbal Space Program. The last part of this video is going to show you how to make one. However, I will have to say something right now. It's nearly impossible to keep a stable Tundra orbit. It's totally possible to keep one for a very short amount of time, but unfortunately, at least with all my results, when you go and press warp for a little while, as far as speeding up time for a little while, the more time you try to speed up, the worse it is. And what happens is inclines change, velocities change, and several other things change. This means when your velocity changes, if you speed up, you can go in a higher orbit or you can go in a lower orbit, depending on if it's on the apogee or perigee side. If you slow down, you can be deorbiting. Your incline changes, you're not in a Tundra orbit anymore. I mean, there's many problems with that, and I've had it where I had something at 90 degrees in the inclination, and it goes automatically to a 45 when I had the game speed up. So I'm not really going to show too much in the game, but I will show you a couple things. But as far as putting it up into a Tundra orbit, I'm going to definitely show you that. Now, as far as things goes, as you see here, I was requested this by someone in Kerbal Space Program's forums. I normally don't show this off, but there is something I wanted to mention right here. The person said that they read the wiki on Tundra Orbits, and they found that you can cover a whole planet with 4 comm satellites or communication satellites. This is not really true at all. And I'm not trying to point this out against them. I want to point this out against, as far as this will only be true if the planet or body, being a moon or you or whatever, is small enough. So that's something to keep in mind. You can, if a planet or let's say a body is small enough, in fact it's probably not even a moon at that point, if it's small enough, you can actually have 2 satellites orbiting. That's interesting. But as far as things goes, I'm assuming that they're talking about Surrey Radio. They're the only company I've known of to ever use a Tundra orbit. Now, this being said, let's take a look at a wiki, and I've actually looked at this real quick since they mentioned that, and they're right, it does not show nothing, unfortunately. If it does show this part that I'm going to talk about, then sorry, I really didn't see it in here. But Tundra orbits were developed, at least the technique was developed by the Russians. Now, commercially wise, Surrey Satellite Radio is the first to actually use this for their satellite. So anyways, as far as things goes, I will leave the link below to this. I'm going to be really mostly explaining everything using this picture because the map on Kerbal Space Program kind of sucks. I mean, here it is, and I have it set up for another explanation. As far as this goes, this is a eccentric orbit, as far as what I call eccentric Tundra orbits. What makes it eccentric? Well, what happens is you have a orbit like this. Let's say a orbit like this, that Mon or moon, we all know that's a moon. This is not a eccentric orbit. This is a stable, circularized orbit. A eccentric orbit is like this. What happens is once something has a orbit where one part of it is very close to whatever it's and the other part is kind of far away. You have where the furthest point away, it slows down, as you see, slow, and around here it just starts speeding up, as you see, speeding up, speed, and then again slowing down. That's what happens. That's the very important thing I want to point out. As you can see here on this map, you can see it zoom past there, slowing down, very slow, coming back up, and it should start speeding and zooms past and goes back down. It's a very easy, and in fact that's a very useful orbit, the eccentric orbits. I'm not really going to get too deep into those because, to be honest, it's more of a, at least for me, it's more of a common one to see. And if you have any questions, any particular questions on it, not on how you make it, because let's put it this way, if you got to learn how to make one, you need to take a look at my previous video on orbits and whatnot. I'll leave a link below talking about eccentric orbits and whatnot. So if you don't really know it, and if you want to know a specific part in eccentric orbits, let me know and I'll try to help you out, or I'll try to guide you somewhere if I can't make a full video out of it. So what happens here? You may guess this is the slowest part. No, this is the slowest part. So what happens with stereo radios? They have 3 radios in their orbits at any given time, and I'll get into the 4 radio thing in a second. They have 3 radios because what happens is, if you have a radio here going in, a radio here going out, and a radio or satellite, sorry about that, satellite, not radio, satellite here, and satellite here, then what will happen is, by the time that this satellite gets over here, this satellite's gone in here, and by the time that this satellite's gone, this one's replaced it. By the time that this satellite is over here, this one that's was over in this area is over here. So as one comes in, one leaves. So you always have something in this area, and that's very important to note, because in this area you don't always have something. That's very important to note. It's a high possibility you might not have something in that area at this given time if this orbit was true. Now, why is that important? Well, one of the first reasons why someone would want a Tundra orbit over a geostationary orbit is use less satellites to cover more area. Now, what do I mean by that? If you take a look at Japan, I hope that's Japan. If it's not, I'm sorry. But if you take a look at this area, saying it's Japan, Japan's famous for its mountains and trees and whatnot. Satellites are horrible for piercing through mountains, trees, and whatnot. So if you have a satellite beamed up, coming in as one comes out, what happens is you have, say, like a Surrey central radio thing, beams its music from here to satellite A and satellite B, and what happens is, say there's a mountain range right here, satellite A hits this side of it, satellite B hits the other side of it. It's pretty simple. Given that these orbits are very slow, that means that you don't have signal loss as much. When you're all sitting in the same place and dealing with a satellite radio, and the thing loses signal for a short time, it's because it's going from one satellite to the next, and that's because the satellite's moving. It's a very slow thing, so it doesn't happen that often where you lose a little bit signal, but it is possible, and it happens less in this than a geostationary. Now, let's cover why, and I know I skipped over a bunch of things, and I'll leave a link to the forum page. Let me get over the 3 reasons why you would want a Tundra orbit over a geostationary. The first reason is, again, you cover more area, as we talked about. The second area is there isn't too many geostationary orbits. This is very important because, well, let's put it in all honesty. If you're in front of a shop and there's all the spaces are taken up, what are you gonna do? Park on top of an air car? Literally? That ain't happening. So now let's go into the third reason. Well, there's the cost. It's possible, I don't know for a fact, and I don't really think it is cheaper to put one in a Tundra Orbits. It might be better because you don't have to worry about the space debris. There's that as an advantage. And there's a lot of space debris from all satellites screwing up and hitting each other and just floating there and whatnot. In fact, it's been said multiple times, whoever figures out how to A, refill satellites, because that's the reason why most satellites die out, and B, get the satellites dead, uses satellites and junk, will be the richest person on Earth. So there's a lot of space junk, and this could probably get you out of that area. I don't really know where all the space junk is, and let's just assume that. As far as the cost, there's permits. To put something in space, and this is the United States side, you gotta have permits. You gotta have permits for a rocket, you gotta have permits for the fuel, you gotta have permits for where is it gonna go in space, you gotta have a bunch of things. So there's, in fact, it's basically the government doing 2 things. First off, collecting money for putting things in space. The second, and more importantly, they're making sure that 2 things are not going to happen. First, that this will interfere with military satellites, spy satellites, weather satellites, research satellites, and so on. You don't want to interfere with that. Those are government satellites. Most of them are so important because if the weather satellite doesn't work for one reason or another for a couple of days, that could be life and death for many people. Same thing goes with spy satellites, research satellites, and whatnot. But as far as the second reason is to keep satellites from colliding with one another. Now this does happen once in a while, and it is a very bad thing. Because what happens when something collides with something else in space? Let's talk about satellites wise. What happens is, first thing is they break. Let's say nuts and bolts and whatnot fly out. Now, you have things in a orbit because it doesn't just, fall to the Earth and like, a plate in the ground and it stays on the ground. No, it's in orbit. Now that's more stuff you got to look out for. So what happens is you have things with different mass, most likely different velocities. That means that things will come either faster or slower, and you got to track multiple things. You got to track each nut, you got to track each bolt, you got to track each little sliver of metal that fell off. And here's the very important reason why. And an actual real world example. One of the orbiter missions, orbiter is the plane thing. I don't have a public domain picture of it, but it's basically the manned space flight that used to go up, the plane looking thing that used to go up until a certain individual shut down the manned space flight and had no plans of replacing it with something useful. Yeah, that kind of kept me out of work for a long time, plus a bunch of other people out of work and still looking for jobs. But anyways, let's go back to the topic. When Orbiter was running, one of the missions had it where it was going straight up, all fine and whatnot. When it was either a spacewalk or when the orbiter came back. Whenever the orbiter comes back, there's a inspection on the orbiter itself. They have to take off tiles, put on new tiles, clean things, make sure everything is just almost like brand new, and they have to inspect everything, the windshield, everything. So it's basically like you basically made a brand new thing. Just the whole of it is the same, and some of the other things are not going to be touched. The windshield, the windshield is pretty thick. I don't know the exact, but it's pretty thick. A quarter of the windshield thickness was taken out, and what they found the cause of it was like a hole, and it had a little bit to go, quite a bit to go before it breached inside. But what it was is a paint chip. Literally, a paint chip floating in space from one of the previous missions hit the windshield and took out a huge chunk. This is ordinary paint chip, like a paint chip that falls off your wall or something. That's pretty bad. Now, this stuff on Mythbusters where a card can't kill you and whatnot, bullcrap. A paint chip that causes that, a car could definitely kill you if you go at high enough speeds. So that's very important to note, because you don't want nuts and bolts to go through a windshield, because that can easily happen. Now, as far as that goes, that's pretty much all I got on Tundra Orbits. I put some different information on the forums. As far as things on here, I'm going to show you how to actually get in a Tundra Orbits and Kerbal Space Program. Again, Kerbal Space Program is in the beta phase right now, and the fact is Tundra Orbits and other orbits are not stable, at least yet. Basic orbits seem to be alright, but these more so advanced orbits are not stable. Also, with Tundra Orbits, I honestly cannot think of an actual good reason why you'll have it over geostationary. For Kerbal Space Program, you kind of have no choice, because there is no geostationary, unless if you go on this line, and to be honest, it's kind of far. So I don't know. I honestly, it's bugging me, because I cannot think of a way to say it is important, because in all honesty, it's just not important. So if you know of a way and know why it's important, an actual good way of using it, and know why exactly Siri chose to use it, please leave it in the comments. But anyways, it's been Craig Bennett, the founder and owner of TechFuseNup. The rest of this is going to show you the how to actually get into orbit, get into the correct orbit, and to get into a Tundra orbit. Keep in mind, I use autopilot stuff. I'm going to speed up quite a bit, and if you got any questions during this video or anything else, then feel free to leave it in the comment section below, and I will help you out. Also, keep in mind, if you want to put your Tundra orbit over a given area, say for example, if you come out and have your Tundra orbit over the Kerbal Space Center, and you want it really over on the air side of the world, just have your incline at 0, travel to wherever you want it, and then turn your incline to 63 degrees, and that way you can get the Tundra orbit where you want. That's the only thing I didn't show. I showed you going straight from the center to a Tundra orbit. So anyways, the rest of this video is just pretty much the ambient music playing in the background, which was from Audio Micro, and please check them out. Again, if you got any questions, you know where to get me. Have a good day.